This is the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today? This is the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral, BamaCentral.com. You're watching us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, right there at Joe Gaither 6 on my social media machines, or you're watching us on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. You can get everyday's show right there on BamaCentral.com. We appreciate you joining us right there, watching us, or you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon at Joe Gaither 6. Excuse me. I'm seeing some text messages come through, throwing me for a loop. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. So we appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show right there on your favorite podcast platform. We had a little bit of a day yesterday where we enjoyed a little holiday, so we appreciate everybody sticking with us. We're back at you on a Thursday as we're winding down the month of June. What are we, 71, 72 days away from Alabama football kicking off against Western Kentucky, and we are very excited to get there. But what are we going to talk about at the tail end of June? We're going to talk about a handful of different things today. We're going to talk about Keelon Russell just a little bit more as he is almost done competing in the Elite 11 finals out there in California. Day 1 and day 2 went very, very good, and we're seeing some initial reports about day 3 having a great time during the 7-on-7 portion with Keelon Russell. So we'll talk about some of the highlights that we've seen out of Keelon Russell, Alabama's quarterback commit. We're going to keep the recruiting theme going as it is a huge weekend, massive weekend for Alabama football, as it's the last official visit weekend of the summer before the coaching staff goes on a little bit of a break and gets ready for the start of fall camp in July. But Alabama is ending. Goodness gracious, they're ending their period of official visitor weekends with a massive bang. So we're going to talk about some of the guys that are going to be on campus starting tomorrow. And then we're going to talk about two different things that came up on Bama Central's Just a Minute. We have the Just a Minute series that airs basically every single day. It's either, and so I did mine on Tuesday. I talked about Keelon Russell at the Elite 11 finals, basically previewing that. But on Wednesday and Thursday, our friends Katie Wyndham and Blake Byler talked a little bit of Alabama basketball topics and NCAA tournament topics. So we're going to kind of piggyback off their topics. And then we're also going to talk about the photos that we have seen from the Alabama football players over the last, about a week or so. So let's get right into it. You can jump in and join us on the comments section at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Go ahead and send me your comment, question, query, or complaint, and we'll pop it right up and address it. We appreciate everybody who's jumped in and joined us. Let's talk about Keelon Russell. Keelon Russell, I believe, has finished his time now today at the Elite 11 finals. Day 1 and day 2, he was rated number 2 both days. Number 1, the first day he was behind the Texas A&M commit. And then today, I believe, and Wednesday, I believe he was behind Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame commit. So you had him finish second both days. But day number 3, which is today, is the 7-on-7 period. He goes 19 of 25 with 5 touchdowns. Now, of course, it's not real football. It's 7-on-7. It's 7-on-7. And so it's not really real football. But what does it show you? What did you see out of all 3 days? The highlights that came out from basically the who's who of recruiting people out there in California. You saw a very, very accurate quarterback. And you saw him perform very, very well consistently. And why? What stood out to me? To me, it was his footwork. His footwork is very, very deliberate and very, precise. And so, look, people have talked about him being, the 7th or 8th best quarterback in the class, and, he's a 4-star prospect, and, he was committed to SMU, so he can't be that good. But I really and truly think it's just about the weight issue for Keelon Russell. He's still listed at 175. But when you just watch him on film, and granted, this week's film was all in, shorts and T-shirts, not a live rush. But what you're evaluating this week is fundamentals and mechanics. And what you saw this week out there at the Elite 11 finals was a quarterback who has very, very sound fundamentals. you can put another 20 pounds on him when you get to the college level. When he gets the cafeteria and he gets the college strength and conditioning program. Granted, yes, 175 pounds is light, but he's still a rising senior. So he's got another, 3 years? He's got another 7 months or so in high school. Let's say he early enrolls in December, which I would expect. He's got 6-7 months left in high school. And then he's going to get into a college weight room, into a college dietary program. And I would imagine when he's ready to start at the college level, he will be playing around 205, 200, 205, maybe even 210. I like what you've seen out of Keelon Russell this week. Obviously, he's not the number one quarterback that's out there. But I think he can be. I think he can grow into that. I think there is a lot to work with. And for everybody who, at the start of the month, he flipped his commitment on January 5th, January 6th, right in that range. He I think a lot of people saw, he was committed to SMU. Why wasn't he committed to some of these bigger name programs? I think Alabama scored pretty well considering starting the relationship late with a lot of these quarterbacks and recruiting late with a lot of these quarterbacks. Kalen DeBoer getting hired in January and basically getting into this cycle late. And so with that being said, you've got to adjust. You got to adjust and you got to get a quarterback into the class. I mean, you want to keep one quarterback every class. Obviously, with the transfer portal, it's not as important, but a healthy program takes a quarterback every class. And you look at Alabama's quarterback room, and it is absolutely loaded. And I think Keelon Russell is going to fit right into that quarterback class. I was really, really impressed with what I have seen out of him at Elite 11. Granted, on air, against nothing, 7-on-7. There's not real football. There's not bullets flying around you. And so, of course, you got to take it with a small grain of salt. But I think that his fundamentals and his mechanics and his footwork are very, very good. Very, very good for a 16, 17-year-old kid. And obviously it has translated to the football field over the last 2 years in one of the best divisions in Texas, one of the best divisions in all of high school. 6A Texas high school football, 2-time state champion. He's only lost one game as a starting quarterback over the course of 2 years. So I think Keelon Russell is going to be a very, very exciting prospect for Alabama fans to get behind. My man Stingray jumps in on the comments on Facebook, and so can you. Hey, Joe Gaither, happy summer. Today is the first day of summer. And me and the dog, we walked early today. You can kind of see her in the background right there. She's all whipped from walking this morning. Yes, we hope you guys are enjoying your summer. If you are walking the dogs, do it early in the morning or late at night because the pavement gets so hot here in Alabama. Thanks for your comment, Stingray. We're going to move on to the rest of the weekend, as it's a huge, huge weekend for Alabama football. It's the last official visitor weekend. And look, you've had at least 2 commitments on every single official visitor weekend. You got Keelon Russell. You got you got Michael Carroll. You got Michael Carroll. You got Chuck McDonald. You got Mal Waldrop. You've got the London Collins. We talked about him. You got multiple commitments over every single official visitor weekend. And honestly, I don't think there's any reason why you won't expect that again this coming up weekend. So who's coming to campus this weekend? You got a lot of people, and this is from 24/7 Sports. You got Justice Terry, Caleb Cunningham, Dijon Lee, Derek Meadows, Micah DeBose, Damian Shanklin, Ty Jackson, Josiah Sharma, Floyd Buchanan, and 3 Alabama commits already, Antonio Coleman, Abdul Sanders, and Luke Metz. So we run through those names, and you're like, oh, Joe, that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not following recruiting. Well, let me tell you why it's a big deal. First, the biggest name that jumps off that page to me, okay, I'm caught between 2 minds. It's either Justice Terry or it's Dijon Lee. Personally, I have been really liking Dijon Lee for a long, long time. So, yeah, if you had a gun to my head and said pick your favorite, pick the most important, to me it's Dijon Lee. He's a 5-star, 4.5, 5-star cornerback out of California. The man's like 6'3", 190 pounds. He's a long cornerback. And look, you look at everybody who's after him: Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. He was at Georgia last weekend. I think that it's pretty obvious that he's a high-level cornerback prospect. Now, Alabama's already got himself a cornerback or two in the class, and great. I mean, Chuck McDonald is going to be really, really good, and Zamir Smith is looks like he might be a little bit of a project. But if you get Dijon Lee into this cornerback class, you look at last year's cornerback class of Xavier Brown, of Jalen Mbakwe, and Zay Mincy. You look at last year's class, that was a great cornerback class. And if you follow it up by pulling Dijon Lee into the class, adding him to Chuck McDonald and adding him to Zamir Smith, I think you're following up with another second straight, really, really strong defensive back class. Now, Justice Terry is probably the name that a lot of people got most excited about this week. Justice Terry, you look at him on paper and you see what he's been doing. Justice Terry was committed to USC as of like a week ago, really about 5 or 6 days ago. You look at his official. He decommits June 19th. Oh my gosh, that was yesterday. That didn't feel like yesterday. I thought it was Monday or Tuesday. Regardless, Justice Terry, 5-star defensive lineman out of Manchester High School in Manchester, Georgia, was committed to Southern California as of the early part of this week. He decommitted from Southern Cal. He's 6'5", 275 pounds. You look at 247, and they got him rated as the number 2 defensive lineman in the entire class and the number 7 player in the entire class. He helped Manchester go 11-3 last year. Racked up 78 tackles, 13 sacks, 2 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles as a junior. As a sophomore, 38 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception in just 10 games. And also played tight end, catching looks like 3 passes for 100 yards and a touchdown. This guy's going to be an athletic freak. And look, we'll let you into the Joe Gaither mind. I love me some defensive linemen and some offensive linemen. Of course, the wide receivers get all the love. The running backs get all the love. And the quarterbacks, rightfully so, get all the love. But everything starts up front. Every play starts up front. Do you win your box up front? Can you win the line of scrimmage? You can have the best quarterback in the world, whatever your favorite quarterback is, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, it doesn't matter, Joe Montana, Joe Namath, it doesn't really matter. Pick your favorite quarterback, and then you take their offensive line away from them, and they're going to have a long day. And it's the same thing. You can take the linebackers and the defensive backs, and they can be the best linebackers and defensive backs in the world. But if your defensive line gets shoved down the field, then you're not really going to do a whole lot. If you can't create pressure on the quarterback, then it's going to make life a whole lot harder on those defensive backs. You can only cover for so long. The athletes are so good on the outside that after, 4, 5, 6 seconds, of course, someone's going to break open. So to me, football is all about the line of scrimmage. And so you look at what Alabama has done along the defensive line. You see Antonio Coleman, you see London Simmons, and both those guys have really, really high upside. You're not really even sure if Antonio Coleman's going to be so solid in the class. He is still committed, but he's still kind of doing that recruitment dance. And great, that's what you can do as a high-level recruit. No shade on you for that, Antonio Coleman. Enjoy recruitment, absolutely. But because of that, there's a little bit of air of uncertainty, a little bit. And you see what you got in London Simmons on Sunday, and everybody was really, really excited about his commitment on Sunday. But let's be frank, he's not a blue-chip prospect. He is a prospect that we see as maybe an under-the-radar guy. Oh, he's going to develop and he's going to grow, and okay, maybe he can be a really good contributor. Maybe he can be an all-SEC level defensive lineman. But he's still very obviously, very clearly in development. And I think that Freddie Roach and the defensive line coach and Kane Womack, I think they all see his potential and believe in that. But a guy like Justice Terry, you get a blue chip level prospect, a guy at 6'5", 275 pounds, somebody who's been doing it in Georgia. Let's see, Manchester. What is their junior All-American second team? What's Manchester High School? Manchester High School football. What division are they playing in? In Georgia. Standings. They're playing D2, Division II, 7A. let's see. Yeah, D2 7A. And so that's big boy football over there in Georgia. And so you like what you see, and you are excited about him coming to Alabama this weekend for an official visit. And you decommit from USC. Basically, everything is wide open at that point. And it's going to be really, really big if Alabama is able to get Justice Terry. Now, you see Caleb Cunningham on the list. We mentioned him, Caleb Cunningham, wide receiver out of Mississippi. Caleb Cunningham, let's get his official so I'm not lying to you guys. Out of Choctaw County, Mississippi. And look, he's been kind of, I'm an Ole Miss man. I'm a Mississippi State man. I'm kind of flirting between the three. 48 catches last year, 1,138 yards, 14 touchdowns as a junior. 6'1", 190 pounds. He's a 5-star prospect that rated the number 1 player in the state of Mississippi, rated the number 13 player overall by the 24/7 Sports Composite, and he's considered the number 2 wide receiver in the country. And so you think about what you've seen. Think about what you saw on social media this week. And maybe you didn't see it, but Kelen Russell was in town this past weekend for an official visit. Was it official? Yeah, he took an official visit starting on June 17th. So that was right at the start of the week. And you saw social media videos. This is Kelen Russell now, 5-star wide receiver, rated the number 3 receiver in the class. You saw videos from Jamarcus Shepard. Basically, you got a little inside view of what these visits look like. If you've never been inside the press room in Bryant-Denny Stadium, I don't blame you. There's nothing particular about it other than the wall of first-round draft pick jerseys. That is really cool. But basically, it's just a podium up at the front and a bunch of chairs in the back like a classroom. Nick Saban's talked up there a million times. You've already seen Kalen DeBoer up there 3 times, I think. So you're probably familiar with the room we're talking about. But in that room, Kelen Russell is up at the podium, and he's kind of getting the spotlight. But Jamarcus Shepard is yelling, not whispering, not talking. They're not encouraging. He is yelling at the top of his lungs about, you're going to be the best ever. We believe in you. We're going to develop you. It's all about, growth and development, and you're going to be the best. Come be the best here at Alabama. And it was a really effusive moment out of Jamarcus Shepard. And it just makes me think. You got Jamarcus Shepard, who's a really, really emphatic and energetic wide receivers coach, and you saw what Washington did last year with their wide receivers. You had the 3 wide receivers that got drafted, Rome Odunze to my Chicago Bears, so we'll see how well he does, but all the reports early through minicamp are that he's going to be awesome. You see Jamarcus Shepard, and then you think, Kalen DeBoer, what position did he play in college? Wide receiver. I think that Alabama's had a long history of defensive back play, putting defensive backs into the NFL at a very, very high rate. Really dating back to Drake Kirkpatrick, dating back to Kareem Jackson, dating back to Mark Barron. I mean, all the way through, right? I wonder if you're about to see a really serious, not really that it's going to be on purpose, but a really serious shift in saying, oh my gosh, the Alabama wide receivers. I mean, we talked about the rideouts before, and we've talked about maybe the dip in wide receiver play over the last 2 years without a true wide receiver number 1. I think those days are firmly behind us. I'm excited about what Jeremy Bernard is going to bring to the team this year, and I think he's a really true wide receiver 1 type prospect. I think he's going to have an explosive season and give Jalen Milroe a weapon that you really didn't have last year. And that's no disrespect to the wide receiver core last year. There just wasn't really the alpha. Of course, Jermaine Burton tried to do that, but I don't know about him playing with the consistency needed to be considered the alpha. Of course, I think he was a good player, and I think Isaiah Bond was a good player. I'm not saying they're bad players. Don't hear me say that. But I think there's another notch above, another gear that you have to reach that neither Jermaine Burton or Isaiah Bond reached over the last 2 years. Even Ja'Cory Brooks 2 years ago, and he was really probably your best receiver a couple years ago. Nobody was able to really take it up to that notch of, that's an alpha wide receiver. We've got to game plan for him. And I think Jamarcus Shepard is really hammering the recruiting trail. And you see that with Caleb Cunningham. We're going to take it back full circle here. You see that with Caleb Cunningham this coming weekend. You see it with Khalid Lockett, who's come into town last weekend. Really, you see these guys. Oh gosh, who was the wide receiver that they brought in? Travis Smith. Travis Smith Jr. Came in last weekend. 4-star wide receiver, 6'4", 190 pounds, out of Westlake High School in Atlanta. Like, this is going to be a real destination place for wide receivers in the Kalen DeBoer era. And so it's going to be really, really interesting to see what Caleb Cunningham does. Now, he's done the funny thing where every single time he goes on an official visit, that team becomes the new leader for Caleb Cunningham. And of course, he's been heavily flirting with the two Mississippi schools, but he took an official visit last weekend to Tennessee. Oh, they're the new leader. Took an official visit the weekend prior to Florida. Oh, they're the new leader. The weekend prior to that, Auburn. Oh, they're the new leader. And so we'll see what he says after this weekend and whether Alabama can be the new leader for one of the top wide receivers in the country this year. You keep looking. Okay, we talked about Justice Terry. We talked about Caleb Cunningham and Dijon Lee. I got three more that I want to highlight, really. You've seen a lot of narratives over the last week or 3 weeks or really the whole month about Alabama's recruiting. And I know this Kelen DeBoer can't recruit. Oh, now he's born on third base because anybody can recruit to Alabama. Part of the only criticism that I really think is maybe valid is what this new staff has done with the in-state prospects. You look at the in-state prospects, obviously Naeem Alford is the superstar, and he's already committed to Ohio State. But you look through the list, and really after Derek Smith, the Southside Selma wide receiver safety that they got, he's the number 3 prospect in the state. And you keep scrolling, you look at Anthony Turbo Rogers, the Carver running back. He's rated as the number 9 prospect in the state. Other than that, Antonio Coleman, sitting there at 12. Other than that, though, you're not seeing these top-end prospects right now in-state, really on the radar for Alabama very heavily. It's not to say that things can't change. It's going to be a long time until December. What do you have? 7 months until early signing date. So you still have a lot of time to work on these guys. No pen has been signed to paper. And of course, you want to make good relationships with them because of the transfer portal. So you might see these guys down the line. But I think I would be happier. I would be happier. We'll just say that. It's a me thing. It's not a you thing. It's a me thing. I would be happier with a little more attention placed to the in-state guys. And one of those in-state guys is Micah DeBose, offensive tackle out of Viger. 6'5", 315 pounds. He's rated as the number 8 tackle in the country, and big old dude. So look, we're not going to talk about offensive linemen too heavily right here, but I think he's rated as the number 8 player in the state of Alabama. He's a top 100 prospect, and I do think Alabama has a pretty good shot at landing him. Now, you look at 24/7, and they're they're kind of leaning him towards LSU, but I think that this fella has a chance to end up in Tuscaloosa. He's a basketball player and plays and is a track and field competitor as well. Big time left tackle for Viger's 4A for Viger's 4A team. I would love to see Alabama make a strong push for Micah DeBose. The last two guys I want to talk about is Ty Jackson, the number one linebacker in the country. He's coming in to Alabama as for an official visit. 6'1", 200 pounds, rated very, very highly. Depends on what prospect services you're looking at. I think he's number 1 for On3 Sports. I think he's number 12 here in the 24/7 Sports Composite. And it seems very obvious to me. I'm just going to talk about philosophy. It seems very obvious to me that this new staff is really emphasizing linebackers, not because, we're going to play a whole lot of linebackers. Really, you only still have the 2 inside linebackers, and obviously you got the edge guy who's going to be out there, but really just the 2 inside linebackers are going to be on the field right now. But you have to load up the special teamers. You have to load up the guys who can do a lot of versatile things. And I think that maybe this staff's emphasis or this staff's focus is the linebackers. As you look through the class, you got Luke Metz, you got Duke Johnson. You've got, 4 or 5 linebackers already? Luke Metz, Duke Johnson, keep going on. Jaden Harmon out of Rome, Georgia. Miles Johnson out of TR Miller. So that's 4, right? Abdul Sanders is 5. He's going to be on campus for an official visit. You've already got 5 linebackers committed in the class of 2025. But if you can get Ty Jackson and make it 6, you're not turning down blue chip prospects. Last guy we want to talk about is Josiah Shawarma. Sharma, excuse me. Out of Folsom High School in Folsom, California. 6'5", 295-pound defensive lineman. And the only really reason why I want to point him out is that he was one of the first couple of guys that Kalen DeBoer and his staff offered a scholarship to after coming from Washington to the University of Alabama. And Josiah Sharma was committed to Washington, I believe. Let me scroll through here. He decommitted from Washington in January. Why? January 28th, January 27th, decommitted. January 28th, offered by the Alabama Crimson Tide. And so everything has been opened back up for him since Alabama offered him scholarship. He took an official visit to Washington in May. He's taken one to Texas and Oregon, and he will be in Tuscaloosa this weekend. So we'll see if Kalen DeBoer and his staff can land this prospect, as he was one of the first guys to get offered a scholarship. So that's what's going to be looking out for you on the recruiting. And there's a lot more guys. There are about 12 or there's about a dozen official visitors this weekend, and we will write it up and have it for you tomorrow on BamaCentral's recruiting rundown, probably right around 1 o'clock. What else we want to get into? Let's keep it with football before we move to basketball. And this is just a really personal thought. You've seen a lot of guys, a lot of the Alabama football players, and I commented on CJ Dupree's, but you've seen Emmanuel Henderson's, you've seen a bunch of them. I commented also on Jaden Roberts on my social media. So if you're looking for any of these, you can see them at Joe Gaither 6. The photo shoots that these guys have done this year, look, I don't really want to disparage the previous creative staff because I don't know them, and I'm sure they worked very, very hard, and look, they really did a good job. But the new creative staff seems to have done something a bit differently with the photo shoots this year. And I don't know if it's lighting or if it's angles or if it's the backdrop being it's a nice crimson colored backdrop. Whatever it is, it makes all these Alabama football players look like machines, look like they're carved in granite, look like the statue David. And of course, they're Alabama football players. They're Division I football players. They're going to be cut up. They're going to be ripped. They're going to be yoked. They're going to have big biceps. They're going to be muscle men. That didn't change, in my opinion. That didn't change. But something about the way they've done the photos this year makes every single one of these guys look like the Terminator. Look like professional wrestlers, look like they're about to roll onto your field and kick your butt. And so I just want to commend the creative staff for whatever change they've made. I think it's a backdrop. I think there's some selective lighting. And I think there's some angles. Now, obviously, these guys did push-ups before their photo shoots, so all the muscles are pumped up and everything. And they're big guys anyways. They're muscled-up guys anyways. But I think that the creative staff has done a really, really good job presenting these Alabama football players for this coming up season. It makes me even more excited. There's nothing complex about them. There's nothing complex about the photos, but it makes me really, really excited to see, oh gosh, that guy looks like somebody I don't want to mess with. And it's really been consistent. Every single one that's come across my social media, I've thought, oh, he looks good. Oh, he looks good. And so I want to commend the photography staff for making some small adjustments and making the guys look really, really good going into fall camp. All right, let's talk 2 basketball topics, and then we'll get out of here on the Joe Gaither Show. And both of these basketball topics come from our friends at Just a Minute. You got Just a Minute going on BamaCentral each and every day. Blake Byler and Katie Wyndham kind of teaming up for Wednesdays and Thursdays. I'm on Tuesdays. We got Will Miller on Mondays. So we'd like to give you a small video package each and every day. You can check those out at BamaCentral.com. We'll start with Wednesdays, right? We'll start with Wednesdays, and the theme was which Alabama basketball player is going to be the next player to win a championship ring. And you might have seen me comment on it on my own social media at Joe Gaither 6. I did a little quote tweet and asked you guys what you thought. And so, but I'll just talk about it right here. The first things first, you got to decide who's really eligible here. You look at the Alabama players in the NBA: Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, Kyra Lewis Jr., Herb Jones, Keon Ellis, J.D. Davison, and Noah Clowney. I ignorantly put on my social media quote tweet that I thought Jayden Shackelford would be a good candidate because of his affiliation with the Oklahoma City Thunder. But Blake Byler, being the basketball expert that he is, said, Joe, he's not eligible. He's not on a 2-way contract like J.D. Davison was. J.D. played 8 games for the Boston Celtics this year, averaged 2 points, one and a quarter rebound, and 1 1/4 assists per game. So I thought, oh man, you got to scratch Jayden Shackelford because the Thunder had a great year this year. The Oklahoma City Thunder, were they the number 1 seed? Oklahoma City Thunder, I think they were the number 1 seed standings. Yeah, they were. They were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Yeah, all right. I wasn't crazy. And so I thought, okay, if Shackelford, if the Thunder actually go ahead and win the thing, then Shackelford's your obvious choice. Well, Blake wisely corrected me and said, brother, he's not eligible because he's not on a 2-way contract. He just plays for the G League Thunder. And so maybe one day he will get elevated to the big boy roster, but he is not eligible for this discussion. And then I'm looking at these Alabama. I just closed out my tab that I needed. Yeah, I'm looking at these Alabama basketball players in the NBA, and I just listed them all out there. But then another name pops off the page. And this is silly, but he's the most likely person to win a championship next. It's Braxton Key. Okay, he doesn't count, or does he count? You can decide. Does Braxton Key count? Braxton Key played at Alabama, what, 1 year or 2? 1 year or 2, then he transfers to Virginia and becomes a national champion with Virginia. And great for you, Braxton. I'm glad he won that national title. Then was undrafted free agent, getting into the NBA in 2020, and he's played with a handful of teams. He's played with the Detroit Pistons. He's played with Philadelphia 76ers, and this past season, he signed a 2-way contract with the Denver Nuggets. And the Nuggets have won through 2 championships in a row before this past season. And he played 20 games with the Nuggets, only scoring 1.1 points a game. In those 20 games, he averaged 3 minutes a game. So not really getting a whole lot of run for the professional Denver Nuggets. And okay, let's take him out of the equation because do you really count him as an Alabama basketball player? That seems like a little bit of a cheap answer. That seems like a little bit of somebody trying to be a turd in this game. So who is eligible? It's Noah Clowney. It's J.D. again, Keon Ellis, Herb Jones, Kyra Lewis Jr., Brandon Miller, and Colin Sexton. And okay, first off, love you, Herb Jones, but will the Pelicans get good enough to win a championship? Maybe that's the closest bridge. I think maybe that's the closest gap out of any of these guys because the Brooklyn Nets aren't very close. You look at Brandon Miller on the Hornets; they're not very close. Now, Kyra Lewis and Colin Sexton with the Utah Jazz, they're okay. They're still. What do they finish? They finished 12th in the Western Conference this past season, 31-51. They're not close either. So none of these guys are really on teams other than her. 49-33, finished with the 8th seed with the New Orleans Pelicans. You look through Charlotte, it's 21-61, not good. So all of our Alabama basketball players are on some not so good teams. The Sacramento Kings finished 46-36, the ninth overall seeds with Keon Ellis, and Keon had himself a pretty good little year with the Kings. But none of our Alabama basketball players are on really, really good teams. I think if you go back to the Just a Minute, Blake Byler, he shouted out Herb Jones on the Pelicans, and maybe if Colin Sexton gets traded away from the Utah Jazz, that can be your pick. I'll just keep it rolling, and honestly, I think, scratch Braxton Key, because that's not a real answer. Herb Jones is probably your best answer because the Pelicans are the best team on this list. Outside of, JD and the Celtics could win it again next year. They're one of the youngest. They were young this year. I'm pretty sure Jason Tatum's under 30. He's like 26, right? 25, 26. Those guys are still very well put together, and they're operating a system much like NATO. It's wide open, 3-and-D. JD could win another ring before any of these guys win a championship. But if I had to strike J.D. Davison off the list because he's already a 1-1, I hate to agree with Blake, not because he's smart, but because I like to take my own path. He is very smart. Blake is very smart, but I like to try to take my own path. But golly, I'm not picking Brandon Miller. Sorry, buddy. I like you too, but you're bringing in a brand new head coach. I'm not really picking Noah Clowney. Keon Ellis, the Kings had a good year, had a better year the year prior. Maybe it was just a dip. Okay, I'll say Herb Jones or Keon Ellis, and then I guess you got to leave room for Blake Byler's caveat that Colin Sexton, if he gets traded to a better team. The last topic is not necessarily specific to Alabama, but it's about Alabama basketball in a way. The NCAA Tournament. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? Ross Dellinger and a lot of the big name reporters have come out as of yesterday, day before, and said that it looks like the NCAA tournament is going to be expanding. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why. NCAA leadership presented D1 commissioners with models that would expand the event by 4 or 8 teams as soon as 2025-26. All right, you're already at 68, right? You're already at 68. You want to bump it up 4 more teams, that's what, 72. You want to bump it up 4 more after that, that's 76. And look, we like inclusion, we like inclusion, but the format's perfect. The format is perfect right now. So if you add 4 more teams or you add 8 more teams, whatever these bozos decide to go with, you are expanding the first 4? You're expanding that round of the tournament. And so more teams are playing on the Tuesday, Wednesday in the play-in round. And I know they want you to consider the first 4 as part of the tournament, but the first 4 started maybe in 2011, 2010, right in that range. NCAA first 4 history. When did you guys start? Y'all started first 4 in 2011. In 2010 they started, and then the 2011 tournament was the first official thing. So they've been going for 13, 14 years now. And I still don't feel like it's part of the tournament. Of course, Dayton does it up, and they have a really big round, and of course the community rallies around that, and they make it feel as big as they can. But to someone who's not going to Dayton and not experiencing that round in person, who's filling out brackets from Sunday afternoon all the way through Thursday morning, because I'm still trying to tinker and decide my bracket, it's not part of the tournament. No, of course, that's what they want to sell you, that it is part of the tournament. But you could pick whatever the 11 versus 11 matchup is on the Thursday, on the Tuesday, and sometimes they do 8 versus 8 or 9 versus 9. However, they are going to determine this. It's not part of the tournament. It's not a real round. And so, look, I know we're only doing this for money. I know that we're driven by money in society, in America particularly. And look, I do like money myself. If you want to sponsor the show, you're welcome to hit me up at Joe Gaither 6, and we can talk some money, and I can sponsor your business. Absolutely. But there comes a certain element where you found perfection. Don't mess with perfection. And okay, in 2011, you expanded the tournament and from 64 to 68. And golly, that was a little bit gross, but we all knew that was a money grab. Why? Why are we expanding the tournament by 4 or by 8? Look, of course, it will give Alabama basketball a little bit more margin to get into the tournament if they're ever having a down year under Nate Oates. And then, of course, past the Nate Oates era, there will be more slots to get into the NCAA tournament. And great, that's all well and good. But if you're the 69th, nice, 70th, 71st, 72nd best team in the country, or it's not actually seeded like that particularly. But if you're on the bubble and you're the 71st, 72nd team on the bubble and you're out, well, look, you're not going to win the dang tournament anyways. Okay, you might be like what UCLA was a handful of years ago, where they went from the first 4 all the way to the final 4. But you're not look. You messed around in your regular season. And you're on the bubble. You're on the bubble to the point that you may not make the tournament. And if you're at that point, and sometimes, sometimes injustices happen. But if you're at that point, then I'm sorry, buddy. You just got to do better in the regular season. You just got to schedule harder. You got to win more games. And you know what they're probably going to end up doing is throwing teams that win their conference tournament in the tiny leagues. The Horizon League champs are playing in the first 4. Well, then they'll call it the first 8. And that's not right. If you win your conference tournament at the SoCon conference tournament, if you win the Sun Belt conference tournament, if you pick your favorite small-time league conference, right? You pick whatever it is, whichever your favorite team is, and you win that conference tournament, you shouldn't be playing in that first 4. You shouldn't be playing in what I guess will be the first 8 or first 12 or so if they expand it. If they expand it by 4 or by 8. And so this is an obvious money ploy. And of course, I understand there's some balance of, we're doing this for money. If Alabama, if the University of Alabama ever sponsors Bryant-Denny Stadium, if it ever becomes Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Bryant-Denny Stadium, I will get that. Will it feel right? Will it feel good? No, but I will get that. I will understand it. This is an effort to save college, save sports on campus. This is an effort to, save the quality of the athletes' lives, right? But as I understand it, the NCAA tournament is, it's a money-making venture for the NCAA. And sure, they're getting squeezed left and right as well. But what are we doing? We're sacrificing the quality of the tournament by adding more teams. If we're going to do that, how long until you take every team? How many teams in NCAA college basketball D1 teams? How many are out there? Let's just let everybody in. Seed them up and let them in. See every single one of them up. Right? There's 351 schools that are full members of the 32 Division I basketball conferences. So, we're taking 68. Why don't we take 350? Why don't we take 351 schools? One gets left out. The worst school gets left out just for balance, just so that we can make a bracket. Of course, they're expanding the college football playoff from 4 to 12 this year. And I was against it for a long, long time. This past year's season made me for it. This past year's season made me think, okay, you're starting to spread the wealth a little bit, and you can thank the transfer portal and NIL for that. I know I'm a little bit anti the transfer portal just because of the free agency aspect. But it has created a little bit of parity in college football. Who knows if the number 12 overall seed can actually win the college football playoff? But I think the 6 or the 7 or the 8, could probably do some damage and win it. Golly, when we're getting to expanding what is a perfect competition, and maybe it's just my nostalgia. It probably is just my own nostalgia. And here we go, Joe. You're getting old. You're becoming the boomer that you rail against all the time. And if that's the case, okay, I accept it. But don't expand the NCAA tournament. It's perfect as it is. We're going to get out of here for the day. We want to thank everybody who's jumped in and joined us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You watched us at Joe Gaither 6 or on the BamaCentral YouTube channel. We want to thank everybody who has subscribed, listened, rated, and reviewed the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. You can do that on your favorite podcast platform. We are going to continue on the Walsh Writing Network, but we're going to separate those podcasts out on their own shows. So we're going to have Joe Gaither Show on Spurs Central, on Royal Central, on Cowbell Corner, on Mizzou Central, on Kane Central. All our different segments that we've done: Missouri, Miami, Boston College. We're going to put those on their own website. So we're going to keep the Alabama content pure, per se. So if you're looking for any of those other conversations, they will start appearing on those other websites on the Walsh Writing Network. I appreciate everybody who supports me. I appreciate everybody who jumps into my DMs or adds me on Facebook or adds me on Twitter. You guys are the best, and y'all are the reason why we do this show each and every day. We'll be back again tomorrow for another edition of the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.